All right. Well, I grew up Italian, and growing up Italian, you always grow up cooking. I never met an Italian family that didn't cook, mine included. So I always grew up cooking with my mom and watching my mom cook. One of the things that she always made certain was that the basil was fresh. If you've ever eaten any Italian food, you've definitely eaten basil. And in my family, there was always a garden and there was always basil growing. Now, what happens in the fall and the winter time when the basil plants can't grow out of doors? You bring them in. And then what happens when they get too tall? You have to harvest them. So, in order to always have fresh basil, you always need to harvest and store. When I'm finished with this, you will know how to harvest and store your basil so that you have fresh basil all the time. First thing you need to do is get prepped for your harvest. Assuming you have a mature basil plant, like I have here, what you would need to do is gather some tools. They're not complicated tools. You need to have your plant, some scissors, paper towel, a piece of saran wrap, plastic wrap. The paper towel and the saran wrap should be approximately the same length. These are your tools, and the timing to do this is approximately the late summer or end of the growing season. Pretty much you'll be able to tell the basil will be flowering on top and won't be growing new leaves as so much as the leaves at the top of the stalks will be large. So, once you've got your tools and you're all prepped, the next thing you want to do is start your harvesting. The easiest way to start your harvesting is just to take your scissors and to trim off all of the stalks, leaving only the small baby leaves at the bottom. So what I would do with this plant is I would trim it just above the smallest leaves. As you're trimming your leaves, your stalks off, you just make a nice little stack. Keeping them, instead of picking the individual leaves, trimming them this way will promote new growth in your basil plant. Next, what you would do is you would take these stalks and you would rinse them in the sink to get any dirt or dust or anything off of them so that they're nice and clean. Once you've cleaned them, that's when you would start to pick off your individual leaves. And you don't want to get the leaves that are too yellow because they've become bitter, so you would discard those. So all of your nice green leaves you would pluck from your stems. Once you have a nice pile of cleaned leaves, you take your paper towel and you would spread your basil leaves out in a nice even layer on your paper towel. And in doing so, you'll allow them to dry some of the excess water off on the paper towel. Once you have a nice even layer, you can cover it all the way from end to end. Leave them set just long enough for the majority of the moisture to dry off so that they aren't dripping or damp to the touch. Then what you want to do is you want to roll it up just like you would a sleeping bag. Roll it up, and then what you have is a basil roll. In the example, obviously I don't have all of the leaves, but what you would normally see on this edge is a layer of plastic wrap, a layer of paper towel, and a layer of basil. A layer of plastic wrap, a layer of paper towel, and a layer of basil. Then what you would do is you would slip this whole roll into a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, or you could just wrap it in another layer of saran wrap, plastic wrap, whatever you have on hand. And then this can be put directly into your freezer, right in the door. And then when that's froze, you let that freeze. And then for the rest of the season, you'll always have fresh basil. And all you have to do to use the basil is pull out your Ziploc bag or your saran wrapped roll, your basil roll, right when you're going to use it because it's already been cleaned. The only thing you need to do is take it out. You want to keep all of the basil as frozen as possible all the time. You don't want to let it thaw out accidentally. So what you would do is begin by unrolling just the top layer. So then what you would have here is you would have, for example, a whole layer of leaves frozen right here. So you only unroll it and you take the leaves that you need, fold it back up. If it's a lot that you've taken, you can trim away so that the next time all you do is again unroll a little more and your leaves will be here and you take as much or as little as you need. Immediately replace this back into the freezer, seal it up in its Ziploc bag or in its fresh roll of plastic wrap, put it back in the freezer, and you're good to go. Then you can take the leaves that have been frozen, and if you need, whether they're going to be whole for in a sauce or a garnish, or you can very easily just take them, put them on a cutting board, dice them up, put them into anything you're going to cook. And this is the way that you would harvest your homegrown basil in order to have fresh basil that's not dried for all of your cooking needs. In my family, as I stated previously, home-cooked Italian food was a staple in my life, and part of that staple was the fresh basil. And I'm glad now that I know how to do this because I can grow my own basil and continue the tradition of using fresh and never store-bought basil in my cooking.